What's up, fight fans? It is Monday, September 11th, 2017, and this is the Monday Morning Analyst here on MMAfighting.com. I am the host of this podcast. My name is Luke Thomas. Thank you so much for watching. 3 parts to the podcast, as always. An overview of the weekend that we missed, or I missed anyway, a multimedia segment in the second segment, and then a look at what's coming up ahead in the third. Without further ado, let's get right to it. Appreciate you guys watching. UFC 215 was over the weekend. Normally I do a post-fight special on my own YouTube channel. I did not this past weekend. I had some other commitments I had to attend to, but here I am for the Monday Morning Analyst. So let's get right into it. UFC 215 took place at the Rogers Arena in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. It had an attendance of 16,232 for a really nice gate. $2 million and then 28,307 with 14 cents. I have to say the UFC's had a bit of a rough year in terms of pay-per-view buys, but the gates have been pretty solid. Nothing blowing anyone away necessarily, but a $2 million gate for this kind of card in this kind of environment, not too shabby. Not too shabby at all. Really nice gates, so pay attention to that. Okay, in the main event, Amanda Nunes taking on Valentina Shevchenko. Amanda Nunes wins and retains her title via split decision. Judges had it 48-47. 48-47, and then 48-47. Kind of all over the place in terms of any notion of consensus about who won what. Okay, so let's talk about this fight a little bit. Number one, how did I score it? I had it, I would say, 3-2 for Shevchenko, maybe even 4-1 for Shevchenko. I had it pretty cleanly for her. I can understand her frustration and why she thinks she won. I thought she won as well. However, you guys know my feeling about judging. I have made it clear a lot. Judging, the way in which we do it, not merely the method per se, like the scoring system, but the method of entry, the lack of revision, the lack of any real meaningful technological aid, and the inherently subjective nature of it, spatially and given someone else's predispositions. Judging is a very, very crude way to score a fight. At least when I say the current system, I don't want to lay all of the blame at the 10-9 must system, but I merely mean to say that's a big contributor to it. But judging by itself is really, really, really inexact. And so to me, could you reasonably have scored this fight? First round for Nunez, third round, for Nunez, and fifth round for Nunez? Sure. That's well within a rational boundary of the scoring criteria. Totally defensible. I don't agree, but it's a defensible scorecard. To me, Valentina Shevchenko deserves to be the champion, but I can't really argue with the idea that the scoring criteria allows for, nay, encourages to a degree, latitude. You want the judges to see what they saw. And when you take into account that they've got different positions around the cage, different priorities in terms of what they can see and not see, or I should say not priorities, different capabilities in terms of what they can see and not see, different auditory opportunities in what they can hear and not hear, different prejudices. I don't mean about black or white or gay or straight, but I mean, Cecil Peoples is sort of an exaggerated example about whether leg kicks matter, whether they don't matter. I mean, they obviously matter, but you get the idea. There's all different manner of ways that can contribute to getting these wildly different scorecards. You add into the fact that they have no ability to revise their score. You add into the fact that some places have instant replay, but many don't. Even if they have a video monitor, to what extent are they being used? They have no access to stats. They have no access to anyone else giving them any kind of information. It is a deeply, by design, an imperfect way to evaluate bouts. They build into it imperfection. Nope, can't change your scorecard. They build into it the fact that you have to make that call with no striking stats or no ability to go over and replay things in your mind or whatever. They don't give you any of this. So it's designed to be imperfect, and I feel like the calls for robbery are totally out of bounds. That's the one call you can't make. These are very, very close rounds. They are tightly contested. They are highly dependent on spatial position, scoring prejudices, and every other manner of possible interference between what actually happened and what you can reasonably recall or evaluate. Amanda Nunes winning is not robbery, not even close. Again, I don't agree, but I can only make a determination based on everything I saw, which included striking stats, which included a function of replay, which included me to think about things a little bit later, and which enabled me to, watch from, I think the HD TV screen is a great way to watch with alternating camera angles, but when you're cage side, maybe everything looks totally different. I've sat cage side for certain fights, and I've watched on TV, and they do look different in person. So if you're mad about it, I disagree. I get it. I completely get it. But the real culprit here is we have built a system of evaluating that takes imperfection and works it into, not out of, the system. So as long as that's the case, I don't really understand why people get super upset about it unless they have something vested in one of the particular winner's outcomes. This is what you're going to get. In terms of what we saw, to me, it was interesting. They fought at range the whole time. Shevchenko had a real hard time closing the distance, so she was using a lot of jumping, they called them superwoman punches on the broadcast to try and close range. Eventually she was able to double up with there and then throw an outside right leg kick. There was some okay body work, but they were over-exaggerating it to me on the broadcast. You didn't see a lot of rib roasters. They were too far at range for it to really matter, and particularly because Amanda Nunes was working at range. So I thought Shevchenko did a better job this time. Not so much countering with right hooks over the top, but just finding a way to press the attack a little bit more. A deeply ill-advised head toss in the third round. You could tell how much bigger Amanda Nunes was, how much better her base was, which put her underneath. I don't know how much those takedowns should have counted. Again, this is going to be a matter deeply of interpretation. But credit to Amanda for, especially the second takedown, relentlessly going after it. I got to give her credit for that as well. And she landed some big shots of her own. A lot of the outside leg kicks from Shevchenko counted, but hard to know how impactful they were. When nobody really affects change, you're going to get stuff like this. It's unfortunate, but it's the reality of things. So much improved positioning from Shevchenko. I really enjoyed her ability to dodge the cross of Amanda Nunes and then counter depending on what the opportunity was there. And Amanda Nunes had a nice jab, actually, and great cardio. So this was a better fight in many ways. I don't know how the casual audience liked it, but I just don't understand the scoring controversy given what you're walking into. If you have any, and I mean any, kind of a close contest where it comes down to 1 or 2 rounds, unless they are absolutely decisive, you cannot be surprised anymore. Stop being surprised. This is the reality. The reality is the judging system, both the scoring criteria and the nature of judging itself, which is exacerbated in this case by the scoring criteria, are deeply, deeply, deeply flawed. They will always be unless there are massive changes made. Huge fundamental changes made. And we're not even close to that. Rafael dos Anjos defeating Neil Magny, 343. I'm so glad Dos Anjos said something. He said, these tall guys in jiu-jitsu, I like fighting them. I do better against them. And I have made this point on this very podcast. I totally agree. There's this weird belief out there that if you're long and lanky, that this must mean you have some incredible guard. It can be in gi jiu-jitsu, where if you're really controlling the sleeves and a lapel, and you got a foot in the hip, you can really off-balance and turn guys. You're going to think of a spider guard or something like that. Right? That kind of matters. But in MMA, when there's no gi involved and obviously the attacks are very different, you see guys like Neil Magny. It happened against Demian Maia. You can't pass my guard if my arm is here to my ribs and my knee is touching my elbow. You can get to the side of me, but you actually haven't passed. You have to open up the arm to get underneath and occupy that space. When a tall person extends an arm or drives out a leg, they have so much distance to recover to bring everything back together again. And Rafael dos Anjos, I think it was either Megan O'Leary or somebody else, brought up this exact point. And you saw him just absolutely buzzsaw through his guard. He faked to the left. He pushed the left knee down, which I guarantee you what happened was he felt Magny push his knee straight. He let him and then twisted his hip straight, brought his leg out, and then jumped to the side. And then from there, he just shredded his guard. And then as soon as Magny turned away, I don't know how to explain it to y'all. In jiu-jitsu, you never turn with your arms out. It's a really, really bad idea, unless you can just scramble or something. But you always turn with your elbows tucked to your side. Well, in MMA, you're getting pounded on. Not so easy to do that. So these guys naturally put their hands out a lot more. Not a lot of good choices, but I just don't see a lot of shrimping back to guard. I don't see in MMA generally. I don't see a lot of like recovering of guard then half guard, or sorry, half guard then guard. You see it a little bit, but not much. You see a lot of these guys go for these breakneck huge movements, and it just doesn't work out all that well for them in the end. So. Rafael dos Anjos looks to be a real contender at welterweight. Neil Magny is a good fighter. He's a great fighter. But I was so glad that dos Anjos made that point after the fight. There's this myth about tall guys. Yes, they can reach for darces in ways like Tony Ferguson. But for all the guys who can do that, there's all the other guys who positionally, particularly off their back, or if they're trying to scramble to their base, they leave massive openings because of the nature of their limbs. And a guy like Rafael dos Anjos will make you pay for that. Henry Cejudo defeating Wilson Hayes at 25 seconds of the second round. We're going to look at that in the second segment. Absolutely brilliant performance from Henry Cejudo. Ilir Latifi defeating Tyson Pedro, 29-28, 29-28, 30-27. Good moments here and there for Tyson Pedro, but sort of like a more veteran, I wouldn't say risk-averse, that's not fair, from Ilir Latifi, but just sort of knowing what to do. Tyson Pedro we've had a lot of hope for, but it's pretty clear that he's got some work to do to polish up some of the more... He's got some work to do to make his game not merely more well-rounded, but take the weapons he already has and make them a little bit sharper. Jeremy Stephens defeating Gilbert Melendez, 30-26, 30-26, 30-25. Man, you know what Gilbert Melendez's stance reminded me of in this fight? He looked like Sean Shirk. Sean Shirk would put a lot of weight on his front leg. Instead of having a side profile, he'd have a bit of a square profile, and the trail leg did just that. It was at almost like this kind of an angle. And he was doing that because he didn't want to, he wanted to have his weight under him, and he wanted to reach as far as he could without really kind of committing to the pocket sometimes. He looked just like Sean Shirk, man. The boxing of Sean Shirk is exactly what I saw last night. Well, I watched it last night when I saw Melendez doing that. You know, I got to say, Jeremy Stephens, when you can back him up against the fence and he panics and he's forced to react, not that he's not dangerous, he can knock out anybody anywhere. Ask Dennis Bermudez if we're talking about against the fence. But he's a little bit more manageable for Gilbert Melendez. But that lower leg kicks were brutal. He didn't check them. I agree, frankly, with Stevens' assessment. There's a certain degree of evolution that I think Gilbert Melendez is missing. It's a sad thing because folks won't remember that this guy, Melendez, man, when he was at his best, he was one of the most exciting fighters in the world. Forget lightweights. I mean, he was just one of the best, period. A super, super, super talented fighter who I think is a little bit older and longer in the tooth now. He did look good on the scales at featherweight. I didn't think he looked bad in terms of his cardio in this one, but that old Sean Shirk style of boxing really kind of caught my attention. The dynamism that Stevens brought really caught my attention. And, you know, there's a question about Gilbert Melendez's corner. Should they have let him go out there for that third round? We have this, and we'll talk about this with the Gavin Tucker fight as well. We've got this weird fetish in MMA about, you know, letting a guy fight out on his terms and oh, what heart this guy showed. Man, we need to stop doing that. You know, did he really need to go out there and take a third round beating? Like, what a waste of time, you know? And that fight with Gavin Tucker should have been, I'll talk about it later, should have been stopped way earlier, but we got to stop this fetishizing about how impressed we are with people's toughness. How about we be more impressed with a corner's proactive behavior? Now, again, I'm not, you know, Gilbert Melendez didn't ask me to corner him, and I know some of his cornermen are great guys. I don't think they're bad people. I think we're all victims of this culture of, hey, if you know this fight's not over until the very, very end, maybe it should be over before that. Maybe we should save these guys some of these beatings, especially as MMA begins to get a little bit more predictable than it once was. All right, let's take a look at that prelim card now. Okay, on the prelim card on Fox Sports 1 or 2, depending on how it worked out for you in your broadcast, Ketlin Vieira defeats Sarah McMahon at 4:16 of the second round via arm triangle. Not even a fully locked-in arm triangle. You know, if a submission is tight, you have to respect it. It doesn't matter if it's a white belt putting it on you. It doesn't matter if it's improperly applied. If it's tight, it's tight. You just got to respect it. I'm not saying Sarah McMahon didn't. I just mean... you know, there's this focus on technique, and there's a right way and a wrong way to do that. And, you know, you go back and you look at, for example, Rafael dos Anjos. I didn't mention this. You know, I've talked about arm triangles a lot. People think it's about this and then getting this way. And as you can see with the Ketlin Vieira one, not necessarily. As you can see with the Rafael dos Anjos one, even that one, not necessarily. Because go back and watch. He gets to the side of Neil Magny and then pulls his chest. I've been talking about this variation of it so much. He slightly puts his chest on top. and went onto the back of the arm, just ever so slightly. And once he does that, that's when everything was super, super tight. And his elbow, it came up a little bit as Magny was resisting, but he eventually got it down and then brought his chest and brought that weight right on top of it. And that's when you saw him tap. It's a very, very slight adjustment, but it makes a big difference. And that's why technique, we always want to say there's a right way and a wrong way to do it, or at least, you know, there's some best practices around it. But again, if you know how to do it from an unorthodox way that the majority of people can't, then it counts. And Ketlen Vieira, you can see McMahon's face turn absolutely red in the course of that choke. The question is the more Kurt Osiander style, which is, if someone got to this place on you, it's not that it wasn't or wasn't tight. It was obviously tight. You know, in his words, you fucked up a long time ago. I was a little bit surprised she gave her arm away in that situation. She was kind of here, and it just went across her body. You know, you imagine you have a dividing line in the center of your body. When you have hands in jiu-jitsu, I'm not saying they can never go across, but you have to be very, very careful about any kind of cross-collar lapel grip or anything. You can do it. It's not that it's an absolute no, but anytime your hand crosses over the center line of your body in jiu-jitsu, you need to be asking yourself some questions about how far over has it gone and what's the consequence here. And it's this weird moment where you can see Vieira, she's banging on her, fishing for it, and the arm just kind of comes over. I don't know if her arm was in a bad spot and it was hurting her and she was doing it to move. It's hard to tell exactly, but once she got it, Vieira scooped it and then did the kind of bit where you dive bomb into the choke to really finish it off, and it worked. So, you know, Sarah McMahon, she goes so far, and then she has these stumbles like this. Ketlen Vieira is undefeated. I'm not really sure what to say about it. I don't know why she couldn't shrimp back to full guard, which would have negated not all of it, maybe a lot of it. I don't know how that arm got in that position to begin with. It was sort of bizarre, but there you go. Sarah Moras defeating Ashley Evans-Smith. Morris, I should say. At 251 of the first round. What a great armbar. Go back and watch how she finished it. I did think Ashley Evans-Smith was doing a lot. Whenever someone has a armbar from the guard, you got to keep your weight really far down on top of them. That's one way to go ahead and do it. And she was, you know, she had her knee on the bridge of her nose. That's vicious, man. I really respect what Ashley Evans-Smith was doing with that one. But if you go back and you watch, to finish it, Rousey does this, a lot of judokas do it to really sort of move the position along, and Sarah Morris did it, and it's, if I have an armbar on you, I'm going to spin underneath you. Why am I going to spin underneath you? Because if you're doing an armbar correctly, that means the back of their hamstrings and calves are pulling on the back of your neck. That's what should be happening. Your posture should be broken by that. Everyone thinks it's about I'm pulling with my hands on their wrist and I'm driving my hips out. That's part of it. That's part of it. The other part is your hamstrings have to be in action. And when the hamstrings are bent and that weight is bearing down the back of your neck and your head, it will, you can imagine it will tip you forward or whatever direction you're being pulled. So when you spin like that, and if you've got all of the different body parts properly engaged, and that was the key to that Morris armbar, that was an excellent armbar for a lot of reasons, but the most important one is if you spin underneath and the person falls over and twists under, it's because you yanked them in that direction with your legs. I mean, not unintentionally, it's an intentional thing, but you know, your legs don't have gripping power, you don't pull them, but if they're locked into position and you turn, the body's going to come with it, which is exactly what you saw happen, and that enabled her to go, you know, this direction where you're cross body but on top, and then you just drive the hips in, and of course she tapped in there, or you know, the thing got dislocated, whatever came first. But you know, she had a great, really flexible guard to begin with. Yo, Sarah Morris's guard is nice, really nice, flexible, constantly working. She's constantly able to get herself into position quite easily. Good trapping of the hands. She did a lot of really, really good things. I was very, very impressed by that. You know, she kept breaking Ashley Evans-Smith's posture. It was nice. To get an armbar, you got to be here. If you're here, there's no armbar. Here's the armbar, and then you get the twist, right? And she got it. And then once she had it locked in, twisted underneath with the legs crunching down, and that pulls them forward and under. And that's exactly what you saw. A+ job by Sarah Morris. Rick Glenn defeating Gavin Tucker via unanimous decision, 30-25, 30-24, 29-27. Gavin Tucker is one of my more interesting guys to watch, I believe, at featherweight in terms of the prospect level. Obviously, this was a very high-level fight. I really appreciated what this was up until it got ugly. Rick Glenn, very patient. Rick Glenn, man, let me tell you what I saw from him in this one. A lot of good things, but the best thing I saw from him was his ability to float on top. It looks obvious when a guy like Rick Glenn does it. Let me assure you, it is not obvious. It is not obvious to sit on someone's hooks, to position them from leg drag to side, to just be able to deal with pressure while throwing ground and pound as they're changing their guard and changing the position of their insteps and pulling and pushing. Remember, if a guy's got an instep or if he's got butterfly guard and he's got 2 feet up, they can pull and push you with this. And he just sits and rides it calmly and stays in position, and he's just banging on the guy. That is very, very hard to do, at least at the level which Rick Glenn did it. Very, very nice. And that really was the doom of Gavin Tucker. He was constantly moving underneath. And people are like, well, you know, if you're not intelligently defending yourself, that's when you stop it. But he kept moving. Well, first of all, that's not exactly true. There was a couple parts there where he just kind of showed his back and was covering up eating shots, and it should have been stuffed. But more than that, as a referee, you have to have a sense of accumulated damage on this one. If the fight keeps taking place in the very way that one person is getting abused, and it's going on round after round and minute after minute and scenario after scenario. If it was butterfly guard, if he was shooting one leg through to come over the top like a single leg X, you know, for a heel hook or something, you know, it doesn't matter. He's getting smashed in all of them. He kept getting pushed to leg drag a bunch of times too. You, as the referee, need to be able to say, okay, this is enough. You're just taking too much abuse. You know, intelligent defense is one thing. Accumulation of abuse, and you're not giving any back. You know, if you're both taking abuse, that's one thing. But if you're just on the receiving end of it, there has to be a point at a referee where you just say, let's say, you're going to shorten careers doing that. The guy has now 4 broken spots in his face. I mean, who benefits from that? And I know Gavin Tucker came out and with a note and said, well, you know, the referee came and apologized, and I appreciate him. You know, he let me go out on my shield. That's not his job, man. I appreciate the generosity of spirit that Gavin Tucker has. I think he's super talented, and he's obviously tough as hell. But that's not. We don't want to live in a sport where the fighters who are in fights grade the referee's job. They can weigh in on it, but we need to have another evaluation of what kind of job the referee did, and that was absolutely dreadful. Dreadful, dreadful job. You know, fighters approving of a referee letting them get absolutely abused tells you why this sport has to be regulated and why referees should not be judged on those grounds. They should be judged by an independent body, in this particular case, the other commission, or the commission in question here, because that was completely unforgivable. Alex White defeating Mitch Clark, TKO punches. 4:36 of the second round. It just looked like Alex White had his number. He was tuning him up at distance, obviously in the clinch. Clark was very, very tough, able to hang on, firing some underhooks at certain occasions to really slow things down, even overhooks when he had to. But White was just one step ahead of him every way, either at distance or in close too. It just wasn't a good fight for Mitch Clark, and he retired there. So salutations for Mitch Clark on a great career. Arjun Bular defeating Luis Henrique, 29-28 across the board. I have to go back and watch. I'm not sure which one he lost. Look, I thought he showed some decent cardio. Jab was pretty good. He had great natural parrying. Did you guys see that? Really good parry. Obviously strong. Didn't rely on his wrestling. You know, he's just really green still to an extent. He just hasn't formalized and developed his game to where he's got a lot of really serious finishing opportunities. He's going to beat a lot of guys because he's athletic and smart, and I thought made a lot of good decisions about distance and shot selection. I think the right landed one time either in the second or third round and dropped Henrique. So he's got something going there, but it's just a lot more to go. There's not a ton of weapons that have been fully developed yet, but you can see that he's got the potential to, you know, maybe become something. So I don't want to give too much of a serious or non-serious grade. I'd say developmentally a good step. He's obviously got some athletic things to keep in mind and watch, and we'll see where he goes from here. And then Cajun Johnson defeating Adriano Martins. You know, weird punch, 49 seconds sort of behind the ear. It counts. The one thing I didn't really... Cajun Johnson was doing a lot of stance switching, which I'm sure, and it did, in fact, offensively mute Martins. He just didn't quite pull the trigger as much as I thought he should have. So, okay, that part was effective, but it was more like the stance switching was a function of pacing. You ever seen prisoners like pace in a jail cell? It's a short cell, but they'll walk with their hips one way this way, then they'll switch the other way. It was almost like that, like super predictable stance switching. Now, not totally. There were times where it was catching them, and ultimately it was that body kick. I think it was a left body or whatever it was. It was the same side. Yeah, it was a right body kick, right hand that closed the show, but it was the same side. You know, kick and then punch him is what caught him in the end, which is a nice combination. Good form. You know, a win's a win, especially when you have 2 years off and you're still getting things back. But you see a lot of stance switching, and if that's what keeps him, and he said he was calm. Look, if that's the kind of stance switching that keeps him calm and it offensively mutes, I can't say that it's bad. I'm just saying I have a question about how much that will work if he continues to win and climb the ranks. It's not like Max Holloway, who switches at the end of a combination on a dime when you're already way compromised positionally and under duress. If you're just walking one way and then walking the other way, it doesn't have, to me, as much room to grow in that particular style. I'm not saying Cajun Johnson doesn't have room to grow. I think he's got a lot of room to grow. He obviously hits very hard, and this was a great win. Just saying, keep in mind about all the different kinds of stance switching you see, and see which ones work at higher and higher levels, and then we'll make some judgments from there. But look, I could be wrong. Maybe Cajun Johnson keeps us up and does some pretty amazing things. So I know this. My man can hit hard. Nice win. 49 seconds in the third round. Your bonuses went to Fight of the Night, Jeremy Stephens versus Gilbert Melendez, and the performance went to Rafael dos Anjos and Henry Cejudo. Pretty deserving guys, I would say. Okay. So I mentioned I was going to talk about Henry Cejudo and Wilson Reis. Let's talk about how Henry looked so damn good and how he got that win on Saturday night. Henry Cejudo was able to beat Wilson Reis for a number of reasons. You heard on the broadcast Joe Rogan and Daniel Cormier talking about the speed differential. That's true. He mixed in a lot of other things. What I'm going to show you is a partial sense of his overall body of work, because there was a lot of other things he was doing, some trick shots, or, throwing things a certain way to get a certain reaction so that you could set up things that I'm going to show you later, right? It's a bigger piece to the puzzle. It's always going to be the case with something like this. But there were basically three things you're going to want to remember about this, and this is why Cejudo won. Speed probably is a good one. I would say the timing was better than the speed. Wilson Reis is pretty fast, but the timing that Henry Cejudo had was really important. But let's focus on this. Number one, Wilson Reis, whenever he defends shots the same way. He parries with the backhand and leans down or dips to his own left. That created a lane for Henry Cejudo. What you're going to see is whenever you have an opposite stance, two opposite stance opponents, what we always say is we'll look for the guy who has the outside, or the lady in some cases, the outside foot. They're setting up a lane for their power hand. In this particular case, Cejudo lets often Reis get the outside foot. You'll see him get the outside foot a bunch, actually, but he lets that happen because, one, he does have the speed advantage. You can do that when you're really, really quick, like Roy Jones Jr., or two, when the guy leaves his head exactly where you know it's going to be, or dips it to the same direction every time, and in this particular case, dips it towards the power hand. You're going to see that a lot, over and over again, and I think they must have game planned around it. They must have seen that on tape, because they absolutely nailed him. I think the other big consideration there, besides the speed, besides the timing, and the way in which Reis defends, is that he takes the angle in a very obvious way. He doesn't really set it up. So whenever he tries to circle out and take that outside step, because he's trying to create a lane for his left, Cejudo blasts him. He times it every time. This is why I'm saying the timing is better to me than the absolute speed, although obviously all of them are important. And the last thing is, not only does Reis dip to his left or keep his head straight whenever he's under kind of attack and parry with the backhand, this hand will come down by the ribs, and he creates this overall wide exposure here, which Cejudo doesn't take advantage of necessarily with left hooks, but there's a certain kind of predictability when he fakes or feints, and he does it with both hands here. You'll see this hand drop, which is an indication to Henry that he's going to freeze in the way that he's had anticipated, or he's going to dip to his own left as he anticipated. So let's watch that play out here through these slides. Here they are, facing off. You're going to want to see, and you're going to see Cejudo's going to walk towards his own power hand, which of course walks to the other guy's power hand, which is fine, but you're going to let him often see Cejudo take, Reis take that outside angle. Doesn't matter. Watch. Here they go. They're going to fire these hands, and Cejudo knows that Reis is going to try and come forward, pulls the hand up. Here he is. You can see him kind of stepping awkwardly. He almost like crow hops into it, right? Or he'll bring his feet together just a little bit to take it. It's not a very super slick. I mean, Wilson Reis on the ground is a dynamo. He's so talented. His striking is not the best part of his game, so the way in which he takes the angle is a little bit obvious. Cejudo sees it, backs up a little bit. You can see Reis comes in a little bit square, too. See how he's facing more to the side, a little bit more square, right? So what happens? He drops the hand because Cejudo, go back and look at Cejudo. He's out here. He's going to wave his hand out and draw it down, change his level. He sees Reis stepping in to take the outside angle. Boom, crashes. Look who has the outside angle here. Look at that. Pretty interesting, right? Now, I believe this one crashes to the body. Yes, if I'm not mistaken, it does. But this is my point. Henry Cejudo knows this guy's coming in. He'll wave the left. This will drop. This hand comes in. He's going to want to parry with the backhand. Look at that. And which way is he dipping? Same way every time. You'll see this over and over again. This time Cejudo goes straight to the body, gives up the outside angle, but it lands nice and hard, and then he steps off. All right, here we go again just about a few seconds later. Watching what he does here. Cejudo nice and loose. Right? Look at that. And they called it a Conor McGregor style. That's exactly what it looked like to me, too. Sometimes we make these comparisons to famous people, and we just pick them because it's the easiest one. I don't think it's actually the easiest one, even though Conor McGregor is obviously a massive combat sports star. I actually think it's the appropriate one. Okay, so here's Cejudo. Excuse me, Hayes. One more time. I'm going to confuse their names 1,000 times through this. Right? See how he brings his feet a little bit together when he takes that outside angle? Cejudo knows this every time. It's not a massive, it's not a Paige Van Zandt style. It's just a little bit, but it's just an awkward way to take the angle. It's just so matter of fact, so direct that you can time everything because the approach is so easy to see, right? And he's going to sort of wave this hand out there. Cejudo's going to do the same. Let's see what happens. They just changed camera angles. Look at the clock. 1 second later, he's going to come in. Cejudo's anticipating it, right? Takes a step back, waves his own hand out here. As we know, Hayes doesn't like that. What's he going to do? He's going to try and this time parry it with his front hand, but the speed catches him. Hard to tell what the footwork is and the foot placement is because of the camera angle, but you can see he's timing everything based on a certain kind of looping way in which he likes to matter-of-factly take the angle. He flashes this, waits for the hand to come out, bam, fires the right down the middle, catches him nice and hard. Very, very good. All right. Here he is again. Look at him. Look at him try and take the angle. Cejudo doesn't mind. Doesn't mind at all because it's going to set up that right hand. Let's see what happens here. So he's flashing this Henry bite on it, sticks his own hand out there to measure, see where he can go. All right. And then you can see step back. He doesn't step back straight, Cejudo. He always kind of curves a little bit, always resetting because that's the right power hand he's trying to set up. Right? There he is. He steps back more. Take a look here. Look at the feet placement of Hayes. We started out wide, right? Look here. Here he is, 339. He's going to come in a circle too. Brings his feet together a little bit. See what I mean? It's a slight thing, but he does it in such an obvious way. And he creates this opening every time he tries to take that outside angle. Cejudo reads it. He's going to cut inside a little bit in a circular fashion. There he is. Steps forward when he thinks he's got just enough. Waves his own hand out in front. Now he gets blocked because of the rear hand parry. So good job there by Wilson Hayes catching it. But good job by Cejudo recovering. You can see him. He throws a left hook that misses. Then he throws a right hook right to the ribs. And then another rib roaster right behind it. So when the guy is ducking and isn't quite away, but you've missed the head, obviously the body is going to be a lot easier to hit. Take advantage of what's there. Cejudo does that too. Here we are again, setting up that outside angle. Cejudo doesn't mind. He's going to wave it here, looking right downfield. Right? Sticks his own hand out, waits for a reaction. This is what I mean when I say he steps in. Look, this is everything I'm talking about in one slide. Look at Cejudo here, looking exactly what's happening. He's dipping down to his own left, putting weight on there, and just sort of matter-of-factly stepping around. Like when you create an angle on somebody, you got to be clever, you got to be quick, you got to set it up, you got to feint, you got to disguise it with punches and kicks, and you can't just sort of step around a guy unless they're not. At this level, it's going to be hard to do that. I'll put it that way. Cejudo sees it a mile away. Look at this. It's all the same reactions, all the same problems, all in one photo. Boom. As soon as he sits up, Cejudo tries to time it. Again, the arm blocks it here, but you can see he's timing him. He's just a matter of time, as a matter of fact, before he catches him here. Yes, he got blocked this time. He got blocked the last time. But the point being is he is putting himself in a position to succeed. Throws the left behind it, doesn't quite get it. So then what does he do again? Boom. Catches him with a rib roaster. Now this right over the top lands for Hayes, but he's sitting in space here, Henry Cejudo. Whenever he's backing up and circling and timing, he's not getting opportunities like this. All right. Still a little bit later on in the first round, same thing again. You can see this. What are they going to do? All right. Cejudo fakes a little bit. And look at the reaction here. This hand comes out a little bit later, and he fakes it, and then fakes the right. He kind of just flicks his hand and then fakes the right here. And what does it get Hayes to do? Look at this. Head, dipping slight left, hand down, rear hand trying to parry. He often brings this leg up. And by the way, Cejudo throws with the right knee every single time. Go back and look at the fight. Even in the clinch, he does not throw with the left knee. Right knee every time. Because that's the way this guy is dipping. That's the direction he wants to go. It might also be a wrestling consideration where he has much better takedown defense if someone grabs his right leg. Could be that as well, but I tend to think it's because he knew the attacks were going to be available on that side, just like his right power hand was going to be as well. Boom. Catches him clean. Nice, right? Here we are again. Look who's got the slight outside angle. Let's see how they set it up. Here's Henry pawing with that left, trying to get a reaction, All right? You can see he steps a little bit out. Right? Let's see what happens here. Does he create the angle here? Does he step back up? Well, let's see how he deals with this. Right? There he is. Fakes a little bit. What does Wilson Reis do? Drops. Ready for the rear hand parry. Which way is he going to lean? Exactly into that left hand. Boom. It's a fake though, so but look, this is what I'm talking about. He does this every time. Brings this leg up, dips to his left, drops the right, and uses a left hand rear hand parry. It's the same every time. So what does Cejudo do? Oh, thank you for giving away your defense. I know exactly what you're going to do. This time, I believe it's a little bit later. Yeah, you can see that what he'll do is when he comes back up, when he's not ready for it, that's when he times this. And I believe it's actually going to be a left hook or no after this? Yeah, to the body. Brilliant, right? Brilliant stuff. This is what I really love. Feints. Completely Reis bites on it, right? Waits for him to come up. Throws the right, but sort of waits just to get the guy to move his defense so he can swing that left hook around. Pretty nice, right? Pretty nice stuff. Now, the outside angle here, Henry has more of it because he caught Wilson in space. He's giving Wilson the outside angle when Wilson is trying to take it. But if Wilson's going to stay put, Henry might move around a little bit. So just to keep that in mind. All right, here they go again. They're halfway through the first round. Here comes Reis marching forward. Henry circling this way every time, right? What do? He throws up a right hand to get Wilson to freeze or defend in the way he commonly does. All right, boom. It catches him, throws a knee. Now, I've caught this slide sort of where Reis tries to catch the leg, but he was right to plan, and again, it's always with that back right leg. He was right to plan around it because as Reis comes in, look who's got the outside angle. He can still fire it up the gut, right? With A, because it's the rear leg, so it has a little bit further to travel, a little bit more power behind it. But B, I also think B, the wrestling takedown defense is probably better on that side. And then C, he's just a little more vulnerable there. He's a little more vulnerable on that side. All right, 1 minute left into the first round. Here we are. They're facing off. Here he is. Cejudo lowering his level, sticking his hand out. You see Reis looking at him. What's he going to do? So the same thing he thinks is going to come every time. Look at what Reis does. What have we said? This hand drops. He looks for the left rear hand parry, and he either stays straight or he dips slightly to his left. Watch Reis. I mean, it's to a T. It's to a T every time. And I think they just knew that he was going to do this, and they were testing it at various points. But so what does Cejudo do? Cejudo knows this is coming. He reacts the same way he always does. Cejudo throws this left out there, this right out there, to make it seem like that's the thing he's throwing, when in fact he's bringing a head kick up. And the reason that Reis didn't get completely knocked out here is it's more like on the instep of the foot rather than like the shin. But this is a well-timed attack. This is a very nicely disguised attack. This is really good stuff from Henry Cejudo. Look, here's the truth about Wilson Reis' striking, as I mentioned. His jiu-jitsu is phenomenal. Maybe the best in the lightweight, the flyweight. Maybe the best in the flyweight division in terms of pure jiu-jitsu. One of the best guys in the UFC, actually. I don't think folks realize how good he is in pure sport jiu-jitsu. But his striking has obviously been a bit of an Achilles heel for him, even if it's come a long way. And I just feel like Henry Cejudo, you have to take that into account, right? He's not fighting the best striker in the division, but it's the ability to set up attacks, follow through, and just look so fluid while doing it. That's really sort of the important part here. And he then follows up with a nice right to the body when Reis recovers his posture. End of the first round here. We're almost done with the first round. Of course, second round, there's not much to it. Look at him again, facing off. Let's see what happens. Here comes Reis, dropping in because he wants to matter-of-factly just sort of physically walk around Cejudo, which is not going to happen. Comes up here. Now when Henry gets his left hand involved here, he's timing something to either create up a feint, a fake, something. So let's see what he does. It looks like he might be either throwing the right or faking the right as he's timing Wilson. Look at Wilson. He knows he puts his hand up here. What's Wilson going to want to do? Take the angle and step around. Wilson's stance has narrowed. Hand up here, hand down there. Henry reads it. all day. Boom, it catches him right at the edge of the ear. It looks like it misses. It actually doesn't, because as you can see, it drops him. But this is what I mean. Waiting for him every time. He's sort of walking in, and he does a lot of motioning, but it reminds me, Wilson Hayes does. He does a lot of motioning, like he's physically doing a lot, but it reminds me of like a third base coach. You know, imagine if you were a third base coach, or I don't even know, yeah, like a third base coach telling the batter, and if you're American, you understand this, or Canadian, you understand this reference. In American baseball, the batter will look at the third base coach or whoever, one of the coaches or the coaching staff. My knowledge of baseball has dropped off dramatically. And what will happen is you'll see him give a series of signs. Now, it's maybe one or two signs disguised among 20. And, of course, the opposing team doesn't know what those signs are, but there's only one or two signs that matter. Maybe it's touching his nose, maybe it's grabbing the bill of his hat, the brim, rather. It's something like that. My point being is Wilson does a lot of motioning to disguise, but Henry is only looking for one or two things. And so when he sees it, so when he tries to matter-of-factly bring his stance together and step around at an angle, Henry just waits for it, puts his hand up because he knows this is what he ultimately wants, and he just kind of sits there in space and times it. As soon as he tries to make that step, he gets him right in mid-stride. Boom! Cracks him. Cracks him right as he tries to come around. It's just excellent, excellent, excellent awareness of a guy's offense and brilliant timing to bring it about. Let's go now to the second round here. There's not a whole lot to this one, folks. You guys know what's about to happen. Here they are facing off. Let's take a look now. All right, so take a look at this. What's going to happen? Where are we thinking that Henry Cejudo is going to be doing? Not going straight back. Always circling towards his own power hand, which, yes, is Wilson's power hand, but we know what attacks have been working for him, so that strategy makes sense. He wants to give up this if Wilson's going to move forward, and that's exactly what he's going to do. Here he is. Cejudo, look at the way they're stepping. Look at this. Hayes is stepping out while Henry is stepping in. He's giving him the angle, giving it to him, and he just is going to wait for Wilson to close the distance. As soon as he does, here he comes, stepping. Henry gets the left hand up, getting ready, right? Timing it, try to get a reaction out of him. He does. He drops weight, fakes the left, the hand comes out, and look at the angle. Henry looks like he might be on the outside, but it's basically pretty even. Doesn't matter because as soon as he comes in, look at the wide stance, right? Stepping in, bring it together, coming a little further. Boom, look at the stance as he gets caught. It's a total recognition of another guy's offense and being 100% ready for it. This is to me, everyone's like, oh my God, Henry looks a lot better. Yes, he does for the reasons aforementioned. It's just a certain fluidity and a dynamism that we hadn't quite seen. A little bit of power that I think was missing maybe before. He really was sitting down on these punches. But the reality of it, to me, is that he knew exactly what Wilson was going to do, and they had an excellent game plan prepared. Because what did this do? It sat him down. The problem with Wilson Hayes is that he was way too predictable in the striking, both from his motioning inside the cage, the particular nature of his defense, dipping to his left, using that left as a parry, dropping the right. The elbow kind of covered the ribs, but it created a lane up top, or he'd get caught in space. If you wanted to motion around, they knew exactly how he was going to do it. He even brought his stance together, which off-balanced him and made him unprepared in terms of footwork capacity to have his feet under him to deal with any kind of motion that he really needed to have. They got him. They got him dead to rights. This was just a much better fighter in terms of the striking department. Yes, there was takedowns in this, and Henry looked good doing that. He looked good doing just about everything. But to me, the major takeaway was Henry's got some new skills and great awareness of what his opponent was going to do so he could bring those skills to life. Great job by Henry Cejudo. And last but not least, let's take a look at what's coming up in the week ahead. So Triple G Canelo is this weekend. Pretty great, right? That should be a lot of fun. In terms of the UFC, they're going to go head-to-head with him for reasons that make no sense to me. But they're going to go to Pittsburgh. They're going to go to the PPG Paints Arena. This will be headlined by Luke Rockhold taking on David Branch in a middleweight contest. Mike Perry versus Thiago Alves. Hector Lombard versus Anthony Smith. Gregor Gillespie versus Jason Gonzalez. Gregor Gillespie being back, that's interesting. Kamaru Usman taking on Sergio Moraes. Justin Ledet versus Zhu Anyanwu. Forgive my pronunciation. Your prelim card, Tony Martin versus Olivier Aubin-Mercier. Anthony Hamilton taking on Daniel Spitz. Yes. Christoph Jotko taking on Uriah Hall. That should be fun. And then Luke Sanders taking on Felipe Aranches. And then your prelim card on Fight Pass, Jason Sago versus Dorino. Gilbert Burns, by the way, who competes next week, and then the weekend after competes at Abu Dhabi Combat Club, ADCC 2017, which is kind of interesting. So there you go. If you got any questions, you can email me at lukethomasnews@gmail.com. Thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate it. Subscribe to MMA Fighting, like this video, and as a heads up, this is my last one for about 3 or so weeks. I'm going to be out of here. I'm going on vacation, so I will not be here for a while, which I'm sure desperately breaks your hearts. But in any case, I will be gone. And so enjoy this one. And I guess I'll get back to it when I get back at some point. So it won't be till October, though. So there you go. Thank you guys so much for watching. Really appreciate it. And until next time, enjoy the fights.